Hi, I'm Lance,
And I'm Joe.
and we're the SAR Guys.
Today's video is a follow-up to the video we did last week about using your radio. Last week was very, very basic, and today we're going to go a little bit more advanced, explain to you how the radio works and how you can get the most from your radio.
So as always, we want to make sure that you understand that this is what we do on our team and how we interact with our team with the radios. Your team might do it different, so make sure that you check out your own protocols and how your team operates.
If you can't hear somebody on the radio, the first thing you want to do is to make sure that your radio is turned on. That could be a problem. And so you make sure that the radio is turned on, and you do that with the dials we talked about last week. The other thing is to make sure you're on the correct channel. And on the Baofeng, it's pretty easy to get onto the wrong channel. So we recommend that you use the lock button and lock the channel once you turn it on and get it set and do your radio check. Go ahead and lock the channel. The next thing that could go wrong is the squelch. And if you have not enough squelch, you're going to hear a lot of static on the radio. Sometimes you'll hear some keying static, and sometimes it just breaks open and you just hear lots of static. Yep. And that means that your squelch is probably not set high enough. If your squelch is set too high, you won't receive anything. And so on the Baofeng radios, there's a setting in the menu. And typically, I will set mine between 5 and 9 on the scale of 1 to 10. And the reason is that these Baofeng radios don't have very good signal rejection. And so you can get interference from GPS radios or from your cell phone or from other radios that are nearby, and you'll hear your squelch keep breaking. And so that becomes problematic.
So Joe, I have a Kenwood here, and there is no squelch on this.
And that radio has an automatic squelch on it. And a lot of the newer radios, it is automatic, and you don't have to worry about setting it.
So don't worry about it.
So don't worry about that.
So now, Joe, why don't you tell us how these things work? Because I know you like this kind of technical jargon stuff. It's not really my thing. I just know I push the button and I wait a second, I talk, and then they talk back at me after I pull my button off. But there's a lot that goes into it to make all that happen.
Well, you stole my thunder. I was going to say, you said, how do they work? You press the button.
Yeah, exactly. I know, but there's different levels. There's the Lance level, and then there's the Joe. I'm trying not to call him a nerd, but I mean.
Okay, well, let's talk about how these radios work. All of the radios that we use in search and rescue for our team are frequency modulated or FM radios. The main thing to know about these is that they are line of sight radio. Basically, my radio has to electronically see another radio, and they call it line of sight because if I can see the other radio, then chances are my radio is going to work, be it a mile from here or from out in the ocean 6 miles away. Pretty easily, I'm going to be able to use this radio and talk to another radio. The problem happens when you get something blocking. Sometimes, if there's a very long distance, and we're trying to talk to somebody that's, let's say the person is behind me, a couple miles back that way, and I'm trying to talk here. A very simple fix is just to turn around and face that direction. And so my antenna will now see that other person's antenna. So line of sight. Your body can actually block the signal. But more realistically, there are other things that block the signal. So we're going to pretend that this is me right here holding my little radio with the antenna. And I'm trying to talk to Lance over here. And he's got his radio. Lance is not happy because he can't hear me. I'm happy because he can't hear me as well. Lance can't hear me. Well, it just so happens that there's a mountain in between he and I. And the radio waves are going to try and radiate out. And they do bend a little bit. They'll bend a little bit, not too much, but Lance is unable to hear me. So if there's something blocking our line of sight, there's two ways for us to fix that. One is to put another person up here with the radio. And so I would talk to this person here, and then this person will happily talk to Lance down here, and then he's got a smile on his face. And when Lance wants to talk to me, which isn't very often, he will talk from here up to this person, and then he can talk down to me. Okay, this is not a very convenient way to operate a radio. The way to make this happen without using a person here is simply to use what we call a repeater. So we have automatic repeaters that are on some higher mountains that are further away. And so now I can talk on my radio and the signal goes up to this repeater on one frequency. This radio receives it on that frequency and then transmits that signal back out on another frequency that Lance can receive over here. And then when Lance transmits back, he's on the transmitting frequency to the repeater, and then the repeater sends it down to me. And that's called using a repeater. The radios have to be set specific for that because you're using two different channels. You're transmitting on one channel and you're receiving on another. Whoever is programming your radios or whatever agency you're with, they will talk to you about the settings for a repeater. No matter which radio you use, if you're using line of sight or what we call simplex, it's going to be one channel on your radio. If you're using a repeater, it's going to be another channel.
Yeah.
You won't be using the same channel to get into the repeater. So you need to be very clear about what channel you're on the radio when you're talking to command, and know that they will be listening for you on the line of sight channel, but they also may be monitoring a repeater channel as they do with our team, so that if you can't get through line of sight, you can get through the repeater.
Absolutely. And just remember that with these, you got to know your radio, you got to know how your command structure is set up, and then understand all the channels that your team is using. And all that goes into the briefing of the mission. And so understand how your mission is going out before you ever leave base.
So that was pretty basic, Lance. I hope that people will be able to understand. If you're not receiving on a radio, look at the radio itself, make sure it's turned on, make sure you're on the right frequency. You're not going to worry too much about the squelch. If you're on line of sight, try holding your radio up higher or face the direction of wherever you're trying to talk. And if those things don't work, switch to a repeater channel.
Yeah. And I know for our team, if we don't have communication with our command, that turns into a priority. Normally, they're checking us about every half an hour. And if we haven't heard from command in a while, then we're checking to see if our radios are working. And if not, we're going to have to change to a position to be able to get that to work so we can start having that communication, because communication is safety.
Right. And the way we do that is, if we lose communications and we just can't get it and we try different ways to communicate, we go back to the last place we were able to communicate
Absolutely.
with command, and then develop a strategy either to leave a person there as a manual relay and or switch to another frequency,
Yeah.
or we terminate at that point.
Absolutely. All right. So hopefully you found this informational and help you out just a little bit. I know for me, I learned a couple things in this. I'm not a tech wizard when it comes to radios. I just know how to use them. And so I appreciate that, Joe. Hopefully we'll see you out on the trail.
Or maybe hear you on the trail.
Or hear you on the trail.